Welcome, welcome, rosebuds! Today we have some scrumptious, scary cryptid encounters. If you're new here, I dig up stories that are true and throw in one story that's a fake. It's a little game we play just for fun. Today we have 4 true stories and 1 that is an imposter. So make sure to listen all the way to the end, where I'll do the reveal as to which story is the fake. So sit back, dim the lights, and settle in for 5 frightening cryptid tales to tell in the dark. Story number 1. It wasn't a gator. Back in 2016, I was driving to work for the graveyard shift. I had been working for about a year at this job when this occurrence happened. On the way there, I caught a red light at this deserted intersection that was notorious for taking forever. Sometimes it did this, so I could never tell if it was a timer or a trip plate. I waited for what seemed like an eternity, but the light didn't change, so I decided I'm just going to drive through it. Who hasn't had this happen? It still made me nervous, that programmed response that driving through a red light is bad and all. So my eyes are instinctively darting around, hoping there isn't some rogue cop out trying to meet his quotas and such. That's when I see it. At the side of the road, my headlights illuminate this alligator-looking thing. It was covered in what looked like black tar, crawling quickly into the ditch. It was quite huge and very black. I'm thinking, what the hell kind of animal is that? I watched it move quickly, and here's where it got even weirder. It left a black trail on the shoulder as it disappeared. I stepped on the accelerator and hurried the F out of there. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. I live in Florida and probably saw a gator or a croc. Nope. I do not live in a state where alligators or crocodiles can live. Also, it was bigger than either of those creatures, and in my opinion, moved way too fast to be a physical animal. I didn't imagine this, nor was it a trick of the light. And that morning, I was well rested and have excellent vision. I could have easily dismissed it, except on my drive back home, the black trail it had left on the pavement was still there. Story number 2. I didn't know they were real. I know I'll sound crazy, but I swear this is real, and I'm writing this about an hour after it happened. For context, I'm a male, 15, and my girlfriend, 14. We hung out at her house for most of the day, and I'm very close with her parents. I basically see them as godparents. I have a slightly strict mom, and my curfew is 9:30 sharp. This is important for the timing for this story. It's about 12 minutes from my house to my girlfriend's house, and my house is in a very rural neighborhood, with every property being about 100 yards apart. I live in eastern Washington. Most people don't know this, but the eastern part has more wide-open areas without many trees. My house was near one of these open areas, and there's not many trees near my house. The road my house is on is paved, but there's a gravel road about a half a mile long connecting my home to the highway. So it's about 9:26 when we turn onto the gravel road. My girlfriend's mom is driving me home, and we're both sitting in the back. We have to go a bit slow since the road is rough with potholes and can tear up the undercarriage if you go too fast. There's a couple of houses on the left side of the road with a big pasture on the other side. As we were halfway down the road, a large figure darted out right in front of the car. It was tall, slender, about 8 to 10 feet tall with very long slender arms and legs. It had a hunched back and oblong head. So maybe you'd think it would be a deformed person, except it had antlers protruding from its head. It was mostly all gray in color with no fur on it, human-like, but no clothes on. I'm shaking as I write this because the sighting was only a mile from where I live. I can't just brush it off as my imagination because all 3 of us, my girlfriend, her mom, and I, saw the creature. It was not something of this world. It shouldn't exist. I've always been a skeptic, and I was never convinced cryptids of any kind were real until I saw this furless figure leap across the road. Also note that this leap was further than your average deer would jump as well, but it wasn't a deer because it was bipedal and humanoid. I didn't know anything about the Wendigo or skinwalkers until tonight when I started to do research, trying to figure out what the hell I just witnessed. I promise this is real, not some creepy pasta. I'm genuinely scared for my life. What we saw made me question reality itself and what we as a society believe in, and have no idea what's lurking in the shadows. I don't know what to believe anymore. And I realize most will think I'm crazy or looking to get attention, but I'm genuinely scared for my life right now. As far as I know, their only weakness is fire, according to Native American legend. That is, if it's even a skinwalker or a wendigo, but maybe I'm wrong. Also, since I'm only 15, I don't know what to do. My dad is in Montana on a trip, and my mom thinks I'm crazy, so there's not many options for me. I swear I'm not crazy, but I have no idea what to do. Story number 3. Being stalked by the unknown. Me and my girlfriend have been dating for almost 2 years now, but we've known each other for the majority of our lives. I live on her property, so I was surprised that she failed to tell me, until a few days ago, that her great-grandmother is an Indian shaman. I wonder if it might correlate with the strange things happening around here lately. Let me set the scene. We live in the rural outskirts of Dallas, Texas, where the city turns into the heavily wooded country. Around our house, we have a trail park that people like to hike on, so it gets a fair amount of foot traffic during the day. However, at night, there's a sinister feeling of dread that envelops that place. The first actual encounter we had with what I'll call the creature was a few months ago. I had a full-time job at my local Sonic at that time, and I would get off either at closing or slightly before. Either way, it was pitch black when I would walk home, and our road is a mile long with absolutely no streetlights. That night, my girlfriend decided that she was going to meet me halfway so I could give her her shake and we could walk together and talk. As we met up and started talking and walking home, keep in mind there's a heavily wooded tree line just to the left of us, we started hearing something matching our pacing in the woods. When we would stop, so would it. The second we started walking again, it would too. So this behavior right here makes it unlikely that it was a wild animal. Also, I know animal sounds, and those were not animal footsteps. Whatever it was on 2 feet. We stopped going to the trail park, and that's when we realized the creature isn't just native to the park. It's recently relocated to our property. When I'm at home, I keep hearing these strange calls coming from the woods. It's not quite a bird or a mammal, but sounds like a jumble of both. Like a fox eating a screaming bird. It comes to her in dreams. For the life of her, though, she can't remember what it actually looked like, but she's positive it had deer antlers. My girlfriend has heard it many times, but she doesn't think it wants to hurt us, because it's had multiple opportunities to attack us but hasn't. She's heard and seen it just as often as me. We're just now piecing it all together, but I'm not quite sure what it is that's actually stalking us. We've tried to draw it out, and it responds when we say skinwalker 3 times, but still, it never tries anything. However, I will say, I whistled one night while walking home and got chased by it. Just as I thought it was going to get me, the heavy sprinting footsteps vanished right as I got to my house. We're stuck between the theory of it being a wendigo or a skinwalker, but regardless, it's not hostile. So maybe it isn't either, as both of those are rumored to be devious creatures. We're moving off of this old property soon. The real test is seeing if it's going to follow us to where we go next. We now interrupt your broadcast for a brief Black Rose PSA. Did you know that if you don't hit that like button right now, a curse of the undying underwear gnomes will haunt you forevermore? Every time you wash your underwear, the second to last pair will mysteriously disappear from your drawer, causing your underwear spending budget to spiral dangerously out of control. It's absolutely true. So protect yourself by swiftly swatting that thumbs up button. All right, back to our regularly scheduled broadcast. Story number 4. I have no explanation. I don't know if this belongs here, but I feel like it bears mentioning. I was 25 at the time I experienced what I can only imagine is an otherworldly occurrence. This happened when I first moved to the Sierra Nevadas about 4 years ago. I had been living in South Lake Tahoe, California for years, and spent a decent amount of time outdoors hiking, camping, and just generally enjoying the beautiful place I was lucky enough to call home. Now, I don't scare easy. I'm used to being by myself, and I carry weapons with me everywhere I go. Being 5'2" and a 110-pound female, I go out of my way to be sure I can protect myself from predators, both animal and human alike. There were many people in the outdoor community who told me to be careful on the trails and in the forest. I usually do these things alone, save for my trustworthy, though somewhat cowardly dog. I never felt so uncomfortable, confused, and downright afraid as I did in my own apartment one night. I had moved to Reno to get away from the isolation of living in Lake Tahoe, and though it's only about 60 miles away, it felt like a different world. Now, the city itself isn't huge, and I was living in the north end of town, which is surrounded by high desert foothills and somewhat sparsely populated compared to the more urban city center. But I never felt as if I was out in the boonies or anything of that sort. I lived alone with my pup, and we liked our little apartment. To give you an idea, it was early fall. The sun was beginning to set at a much earlier time of day. This was exemplified by the fact that the city sits in a valley, so sunset seems to approach much faster than in other places in northern Nevada. My apartment sat just above street level, with a window in the kitchen next to my stacked washer and dryer that looked out onto an alley. This was maybe about 10 feet above the small street that went beside the small fourplex building. It was dark outside, and I was alone with my dog doing laundry. My apartment layout was an open floor plan. With the openness of the space, the darkness outside, and the amount of overall windows the apartment had, it looked like I was living in a fishbowl or a terrarium. Anyone or anything could see right in when it was dark out and the lights were on. Because of this, I made it a point to always close my blinds, save the small window in the kitchen looking out on the alley. I didn't mind keeping those blinds open because I liked the fresh air. And someone would essentially need a ladder to reach me, maybe if they were determined enough. As I was removing clothing from the dryer and turning to empty the basket onto my couch, I realized my dog was acting really strange. He didn't want to cross over that faux line from the living room to the kitchen, which was marked by a change from carpet to tile. Though it was only a few steps, he seemed incredibly hesitant and began whining and letting out small, concerned woofs. At first I thought he was just being anxious, for whatever reason. He is known to be a bit of a weenie, but then out of nowhere, I sensed this immense and insurmountable feeling of dread and displacement. My back was facing the washer and dryer, and that small alley-facing window. My dog sat facing me, almost looking past me, and his clear anxiety and frustration began to build as I was asking him what was wrong. He began barking a full alarm bark at this point, and as soon as he did, the sense that someone or something was observing me took over and caused my blood to run cold. My semi-logical response was, someone must be watching me through that window. In one fell swoop, I reached for the overhead drawstring for the light and turned it off, and faced the window to confront whoever or whatever was intruding on my life. As soon as I clicked off the light, I saw what I can only describe as a perfectly round light, about the size of a small cantaloupe, directly across from me on the other side of the window. It didn't glow like a lamp or light, though. Its edges were perfect, and it didn't move at all. At this point, I was too stunned to move, and my fear response had engaged so quickly, I had no time to really recognize or rationalize what I was seeing. I was looking at this thing, and it was looking back. I felt cold and confused, my hair standing on end, my heart racing. My dog had gone into full freak-out mode, and he was jumping and barking and generally causing a ruckus in the living room. He was definitely seeing the same thing I was. Now this is gonna sound weird, but it was like the light orb seemed to realize that I was able to see it, and it looked as if it backed away or grew smaller in size. It moved to the right of the window. It flickered twice and then disappeared. It didn't buzz away or fly away. It didn't zoom out of vision. It was visible, not visible, visible, and then gone. As soon as I realized the orb disappeared, I caught my breath, then opened the window fully. I poked my head out to see what was going on. Maybe someone was up at my window with a flashlight? Maybe a weird drone? Maybe someone in the neighboring buildings had seen something and would be checking outside their own windows to try to solve this odd mystery. Nothing. Not a soul. Even more, it felt like deafening quiet. I closed the window. I wish I could say that was that, but no. As soon as I shut the window, I heard a solid 3 knocks on the larger window by the front door of the living room. As mentioned before, those blinds were closed, and from the outside looking in, it's likely clear someone is home because the lights were on in that room. But no one could possibly know it's me alone in my apartment, right? I wasn't expecting anyone over. It was too late for solicitors. No one had any reason to be at my apartment at that time. And why didn't they knock on the door? Why the window? My dog had rushed to the kitchen as soon as the light outside the door had disappeared. He was in full-on defense mode now. My dog is an absolute puss. I've seen him run from cats, get spooked by bags blowing down the street, and he generally stays right by my side on hikes because, while we're camping, he expects me to protect him. This pup seemed ready for war. Hackles up, eyes alert, growling at the front window now. I wasn't going to fucking open that door or even peek through the closed blinds. I quietly stepped into the living room, grabbed my gun with one hand, keys with the other, and slunk back to the kitchen and out the back door to where my car was parked. I threw the dog in, started up, and raced off to a restaurant across town where I ordered some food and sat in the front seat of my Subaru thinking about what had just happened. That night, we camped in a Walmart parking lot. I know some might ask, why didn't I call the police? But really? What was I supposed to say? I saw a glowing orb, then my front window suddenly gets this creepy, rhythmic 3-knock sound? That would have sounded insane. I returned to the apartment the following day, my laundry still on the couch. No apparent signs of anyone trying to enter the place. Everything seemed normal. I never experienced any disruption in that place again for the 1.5 years I lived there. I have no idea to this day what I experienced, and it wasn't until I shared this story that I heard the knocking and sense of being observed was a somewhat common phenomenon that people relate to encounters with skinwalkers. Not sure if it was paranormal, UFO, cryptid, or maybe a skinwalker. Not sure. I don't know what the F happened that night, but I'd mark myself incredibly lucky that I didn't end up on an episode of Unsolved Mysteries or something like that. Story number 5, Water Monster. I'm not a big fan of water. That being said, I don't like water sports or day trips where you just hang out by the water. Don't get me wrong, I'm not opposed to outdoor activities, but I'll take a pool day or manicured trail over the great outdoors any day. So it would be just my luck that the one time my friends convinced me to go to the lake, I encounter something unexplainable. I'm not one to really get sucked into UFO stories, the paranormal, or cryptid sightings, but I really have no explanation for what just happened to me. As I stated, I was already reluctant to spend a day at the lake with my friends, but one of us in the friend group was celebrating their big 3-0 and wanted to make the hour drive to the big lake in our region and make a day of it. I didn't outwardly express my disdain because I didn't want to be a party pooper at my friend's celebration. Well, the lot of us, which was about a dozen adults, a few of us married or at least having a partner, all divvied up the food and beer assignments and off we went. I was determined to stay firmly planted on dry land, but wouldn't you know it, my friends weren't going to let that stand. After some time, I'm the only one not in the water. I also should mention that one of the guys in our group is that quintessential outdoorsman. He hikes, bikes, and trails to everywhere and nowhere in between. Because of this, he knew a way to reach an off-the-beaten-path location at this lake. I share this small detail because I think it might be important to what happened. So it was just our group on that secluded beach that day. I started to feel pretty stupid about not getting in the water, and it was hot. I grab an inner tube and decide to throw caution to the wind. I shimmied it over my chest and got in the water. I'm floating with my legs dangling free, trying to relax. Just when I start to think, yeah, this isn't that bad, all of a sudden, I feel something scratch my leg. It felt both slimy and rough at the same time. I didn't say anything but pulled myself up and tried to look over the edge of my tube into the murky green water. I didn't see anything, and I was thinking, maybe just a piece of sunken driftwood with moss on it or something. Still, it made me uneasy, so I got out. I'm back on the shore sitting by myself again when one of my friends screams out in pain. There's this huge commotion and everyone scrambling to get out of the water. My friend was attacked. We look at her leg and there's 4 distinct slash-like claw marks going down her calf. Needless to say, we were completely freaked out. We're sitting on the shore and I just happen to be looking at the water when I see something slightly surface. It seriously looked like it could have very well been an Amazon python. I screamed for the others to look, and a few of them caught sight of it just before it dipped back below the water again. We were completely freaked out. We ended our lake party early, packed up, and decided to take the party back to our house. We didn't have a first aid kit, and the scratch marks were bleeding slightly. All of us were amped up on adrenaline, and everyone was talking over each other. No one could explain what it was in the lake that day. Not even our outdoorsman friend, and he was pretty familiar with that area. As far as we know, there's nothing native to the lake that should have claws and scales like a snake. It makes no sense whatsoever. But I'll tell you one thing, I'll never be convinced to go get in murky waters ever again. Well, Rosebuds, have you guessed which story was the fake? Why not leave us a comment right now and tell us which story you think was most unlikely to be true? Out of all 5 stories, drumroll, number 5, the last story was completely made up by me. Although I will say I do harbor my own fears of swimming in lakes and ocean waters because this story is basically my worst nightmare come true. And I am a believer in cryptids, so there you go. How many of you out there also have this fear? I know I can't be alone. All right, Rosebuds, that's a wrap. Thanks for listening. Take care. and stay creepy.